Welcome to Bruce Hurwitz Presents Meet the Experts. I'm your host, Bruce Hurwitz of Hurwitz Strategic Staffing. I hope you'll consider us for all your staffing, career counseling, and speechwriting needs. I am delighted to be joined today by Diana Indries. We'll be discussing how to have an amazing, fun-filled relationship. Meet the Experts is sponsored by P&K CPAs. P&K is a full-service accounting firm. They provide accounting and consulting services to businesses ranging from startups to small and mid-cap companies to nonprofits, as well as high net worth individuals. Contact them today for a free consultation at info@pk-cpas.com or call them at 973-882-8810. They will be happy to be of service. Diana, welcome to the show.
Hi, Bruce. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast today.
It is my pleasure. Please take a moment or two and introduce yourself to our viewers.
So, as you said, my name is Diana, and I am the co-founder of Better Topics, which has started as a card game for couples and now has transformed into this platform through which we're helping couples have amazing relationships. Also, we encourage them to have great conversations, but never forgetting the fun out of the relationship itself.
Why is it surprising, or why should it be surprising, that people need to know that having positive relationships is a good thing?
I don't know if it's surprising or maybe it's just something that people started to miss over the years. I mean, I don't know what to say, really. I don't know if ever relationships have been focused on having fun with your partner. Because if we look historically at relationships, they've been created, and marriages as well, they've been created with more of a, let's say, economic, strategic thing in mind, and even a survival motive, if you like, But as, the years have progressed, we've progressed as humanity. Women especially don't depend on husbands anymore as much. We have our own income. We can sustain ourselves as well. People started migrating towards this belief where, okay, I don't need to get married, or I don't need to be in a relationship with someone to survive anymore. Now I can actually be freer and choose my partner and actually have fun as well whilst I'm doing it, if I'm still, to actually have a relationship. So I think this slowly has, let's say, migrated to this point where people want more from life, not just survive, have kids, perpetuate the species, and just live, basically. So they also want to enjoy their time.
How do you have a good relationship?
There are a few easy, well, I say easy. They might take a bit of a while, actually, because I know it took some while for me as well to get them right. There are some steps that people can do to actually achieve a really good relationship. And the first one is to know exactly what we want, And this comes with a bit of, self-reflection to know exactly who we are, what we like, and what type of people we gel with properly. And then once we know what type of person we want, then obviously we have to go out and find that special person to have a relationship with. Because I do believe that if you are careful in choosing your partner, you've already solved 99% of the problems in a relationship. That doesn't mean that the relationship will be 100% smooth. There won't be any discussions ever. But that means that, when those discussions arise or problems, you'll have a partner who you can go through them properly, solve any discussions instead of just ending up in breakup, really. So yeah, those would be the first two steps.
There's this saying here, opposites attract. Do you believe that is true?
I think opposites attract to the point where you're willing to work with that and you're willing to accept that. So I know there are many relationships where people have this strong belief that opposites attract. And especially at the beginning of relationship, when the passion is still very strong and everything. I understand why, that can be very interesting to someone, because you're attracted to this other person who is maybe opposite of you, and that intrigues you. But if you're not careful with that, you can easily get to a point where that opposite can actually annoy you quite a lot. I mean, looking at my parents, for example, they are completely opposite as personalities. And although these were the things that in the beginning brought them together, 30 years, almost 40 years later, they're ready to kill each other. They had enough of each other. They had enough of all of those differences. And in my personal case with my husband, we are very, very similar. And we find that for us works very, very well. So, it really depends what you're willing to work with at the end of the day. If you think that, opposites attract, then you have to bear in mind that there will be a point where you will have enough of that, and you have to put in more effort to work with someone who is opposite of you, basically. If you're with someone who is very similar to you, things are a lot easier, basically, because it's a lot easier for you to understand them if you're the same, how they react in certain situations and how to deal with them in more difficult situations as well.
So to summarize, you at the end of the show, I will be sending you a link that you can share so that people can watch the podcast. You will be sharing that link with your husband, but not with your parents.
Yes.
Now, you wrote that you can solve 99% of problems in a relationship in a fun way.
Yes.
Explain that.
So this was the basis of creating the Better Topics card game, basically, because what I realized from my own research, from my own growth in the relationship realm, was that if you're willing to discuss any situation and any problem and don't just take it personally and get offended by it, you can literally solve anything you have in a relationship, whatever it is, if you're willing to discuss about it. Because many times we take things very personally when our partner does something or doesn't do something that we expect them to do. But if we listen to their point of view, why they haven't done that thing, it would make actually sense, if we actually listen, if we understand that sometimes, there are different personalities, if we understand all the whole context of the situation, we wouldn't get as upset with them anymore and lash out and have all these reactions, basically. So when I entered my relationship with my husband before we got married, we realized that we communicate very well with each other. We still do, we're almost 6 years married. We still talk about everything. And we feel that 6 years in, we're even closer to each other than we were in the beginning, because we both believe that, as long as you're willing to discuss everything can be sorted in a relationship. So we created this game together because we wanted to help others as well have those conversations. But also that doesn't mean that, you have to necessarily sit down like in a shrink's office, let's say, where you have to always talk about your feelings and everything. You can still have the conversations with your partner, but also in a fun way, but also make it productive, if that makes sense. Because what we found was we used to get a lot of card game for couples, or so they are marketed as card game for couples. And they were very, very disappointing for us, because many of them weren't even games at all. Like, there wasn't anything to play with. It was just like back and forth questions. And the questions were one-off questions, most of them. And most of them wouldn't even make sense, especially if you're in a relationship with someone for a little while. So questions like, what's your favorite ice cream and what's your favorite color, don't really contribute that much to a relationship. I mean, okay, to a certain point, they might count, like if you want to surprise your partner with a gift, so you know exactly which type of flavor or color they want. But other than that, it's not really constructive for a relationship, and it was boring, really, because we were like, how is this helping our relationship grow? Like, these are not even the actual questions you should ask your partner. So that was when we actually came up with the idea of creating our own game out of frustration with other games out there, because we said, okay, but this is not actually helping a relationship. So we've worked a lot. We've worked, I think, more than 6 months on creating specific repeatable questions. So the good part, so my favorite question is, when did you need me most last week and I wasn't there? You know, and I think that this question is very, very powerful. And you can ask it over and over again, because the answers will always change. Whatever we go through every week changes anyway. So, you know, even if you've been with your partner 30 years, 40 years, you can still ask this question, you know, and they can still come up with new answers. And you get to know your partner even on a deeper level, so that after a few times that you've asked this question, you can recognize the pattern and where similar situations come up, and then you can straight away be there for your partner instead of them having to ask, or them being frustrated that, oh my God, I'm going through like a situation again and my partner is not there to support me. I always have to ask, or they don't notice me, you know?
Well,
and there is the sister of this question that I really like a lot is, when did you need me to give you more space last week and I haven't, you know? Because we all decompress in our own way. Some people like to do it like in a social setting where they meet friends. Some people like to just do it on their own, where they just don't see anyone for like a whole day, just to recharge their own batteries. But again, these are situations that we all go through, and it's important to actually check in with your partner, you know, like, hey, how has your week been, you know, like, how are you doing, you know, like, is everything okay? Where can I support you more as a partner? Now, obviously, these are more, let's say, deeper questions. We have lighter ones as well, and fun questions as well in the game. So I don't want your listeners to get scared that, you know, they'll just talk about their feelings in a game. But it's a mix, basically, of repeatable questions that you can ask over and over again. Like, you can play this game at least once a week with your partner and get to know them in a very light game-like setting.
Two things. First, I can see it coming back and biting you. That you ask, when did you miss me most last week? And the answer is, I didn't miss you at all. I was busy. I was doing what I was doing. Didn't really think about you. Now, that's the honest answer. The dishonest, romantic answer would be, well, anytime I had a free moment, all I did was think of you, which sounds very nice and is very insincere. So do you give the honest answer, or do you give the answer that's not going to get you into trouble?
Well, first of all, I would like to correct your question, because the question is
Okay.
not when did you miss me most last week. It was, when did you need me more last week?
Oh, I'm sorry.
You know,
So
so the question itself is slightly different, because exactly we want to avoid those type of discussions where, oh my God, you didn't miss me, you know. So it's, when did you need me most? And then they can tell you like, oh my God, when I had this issue with, I don't know, let's say one of our kids, I really needed you to be there. And then you know when to support your partner, you know.
It reminds me a bit of how I would put friends' children to bed when I would be babysitting. And I forget how it came about, but one of them, parents, said to me, why is it that my daughter wants you to come back and put her to bed, to tuck her in at night? And I said, well, listen to what I do. I don't know. I always do it the same way. So the first thing I would do is tuck the child in, the sheets, blankets, not really tight so they could get out of bed, but I'd say, I'm making you into a hot dog. And that way there, if you get hungry in the middle of the night, you don't have to get up to eat, you can just eat yourself. And they would laugh. And then I'd say, because I was told once not to excite a child before bedtime. So no laughing, no nonsense. So I would ask, what did you do today that you didn't do well, and you would like to be a project for the two of us to do tomorrow. But you always have to end on a positive. So then I would ask, what did you do today that you're very proud of? And why are you proud of it? And then they would tell me, answer that. And then it would be, what book do you want to read? Well, I want to. And okay, we'll start with one. What story do you want me to tell you? And then I'd read to them, and usually they'd fall asleep after page 5, and sometimes I'd fall asleep before page 5. And then the father would come in and wake me up and say, why are you sleeping with my daughter? But it's funny, the questions, and I say this in a positive way, work.
Yes, exactly.
Work.
Exactly. So I really like this idea. I think I'll use it with my kids. But yes, it's really good because you see, this way you actually connected with that child. You know, you were actually genuinely interested in what that child has done that day. And it's similar with our partner because, you know, we have our careers, we have children, we have family, we have chores, we have hobbies, we have everything under the sun. And what happens is, especially if you're in a steady relationship, you tend to forget your partner. You tend to be so focused on everything else that you miss your partner completely. And we've seen this happen, especially with the pandemic, where people were like so busy and caught up in their life and getting things done and taking kids to school and to activities and whatever, that, you know, months later, and years later, once they were literally physically locked in with each other, they didn't know what to do with each other in a house, you know?
Oh, yeah.
And this has happened in so many places where, you know, we looked at friends as well that were in relationships and they didn't even know what to talk about, you know, with each other. Like they were in a relationship for years and even married, some of them, and they didn't have anything to talk about with their partner. And you're like, oh my God, that's so bad. Like we both work from home, my husband and I, and we still spend so much time together and we still haven't had enough of each other. You know, we still find so many great topics to talk about. And even if we have like a long drive, we can't wait to have long drives together because we know we're going to have like amazing conversations. But then here we saw, you know, a lot of our friends and people around us where they literally didn't know what to talk about, or they would argue. Like when they would meet each other, they would be so frustrated with each other already, and so many things would be built up already that they would just start arguing straight away. One of them would defend itself, and then the other would just blame, and then it would just like go out of hand. So this is again another reason why we came up with this game, because in a game-like setting, you're more relaxed, you know, and the questions as well are created in a way that are not blameful in any way, you know, and it's talking about actual situations and how to improve them and how to make them better for the couple, really. So it's basically a really good tool that couples can use to have fun together and also deepen their connection and reconnect basically with each other periodically, you know, and actually ask the important questions that help the relationship grow.
I just want to point out to our readers that your game, Better Topics, won the Innovative Gaming Product of the Year for 2021-22 and the
Yes.
Central England Prestige Awards. So
yes,
congratulations.
thank you.
Now, everything that you've said about relationships, you've been talking about personal relationships. What
Yes.
about work relationships?
You know, a lot of things that we've implemented in this game and a lot of things that I talk about personal relationships are coming from my own experience and education from work environment relationships. Because before doing this full time, the Better Topics game and platform, I was actually a manager in the NHS, which is the National Health System, meaning at a hospital in the UK. And going through management training, we've learned a lot about personalities, how to deal with different types of personalities, recognize them, you know, how to get the best outcome out and all of these things. And going through that training, you know, and the actual experience as well of having my own team and having to manage them properly, I kept thinking to myself, oh my God, if people would use these principles at home as well, with their spouse, with their family, you know, with their kids even, things would be so different, you know, so many relationships would be improved. And many times I was wondering why people don't do it, because even around me, we would be like hundreds of managers, going through the same training, and still many of them would have very bad relationships. And I don't know, maybe it's a case of they don't want to put in the same level of effort like they do at work. Maybe they don't really think it's working. They just do it maybe at work because they have to. I don't know. The reasons behind it can be many, but I know, again, from my personal experience, that having implemented those principles at work, they helped me a lot, in managing my team, getting great results with them, and also at home with my family at the time. Once I understood the principles and I started applying them in my own family, with my parents, with my brother, with my husband, everything just started being so much easier and, well, less stressful, really, and less blameful, and just, filled with great conversations and great decisions, and moving forward like a true team, really.
I've worked on many teams, but two come to mind. The first one, I was the team leader, and for lack of a better expression, and there was one guy didn't show up on time, left early, was totally unreliable, and he lasted with me a week. I fired him. Now, the first time I fired somebody, the night before, I didn't sleep a wink. She didn't deserve to be fired. It was the boss's fault she was being fired, and it just wasn't fair. And she took it very well. And I let her vent, and every complaint she made was spot on. In this case, it didn't bother me a bit. I wanted this guy gone because all he was trouble. And the minute I fired him, the members of the team came to me individually and said, thank you. Yeah. And then we were able to work together. We didn't need him. Everybody voluntarily just took on a little bit of extra work, got everything done. Another time, we had a colleague. It's a sad story. She was pregnant with twins. And I have a wicked sense of humor. She was in the union, and I went to her and I said, listen, we need to have a discussion. We're going to be making some renovations to the building, and we want the union to pay for it. She was like the union rep amongst the employees. I don't remember what it was called. And she said, well, what are you talking about? I said, well, we're going to have to reinforce the floor under your desk now that you're going to be having twins. And she laughed, and she could take it. She could dish it out as well as she could take it. And that was the nature of our relationship. A few months later, I saw her, and I went over and I said, hi, how you doing? She said, fine, thanks. How are you? I said, good, good. Enjoy the party. And then a colleague came over and said, what's the matter with the two of you? I said, why are you saying that? She said, usually you're fighting back and forth. It's fun. But you're not fighting now. And I motioned to her to leave the room. Went outside and said, you're married, correct? You have a child? You were pregnant? Uh-huh. When you were 6 months pregnant with your one child, how big was your stomach? And then I pointed to her. A few weeks later, she lost the babies. All right. Oh my God. And I said, it was a sad story. And the result was, first, she quit. And I immediately said, no, she's not quitting. She's coming back to work. She did nothing wrong. These things happen. And she needs to work. And couldn't convince her. Everybody tried to, couldn't convince her. She moved, I think, to Florida. She wanted to get away from everything. And we all understood that.
Yeah.
But that brought us together as a team. So getting rid of someone good and having someone good leave because of tragedy brought people together, and any little dispute we had vanished.
Yes, but you see, all of that was achieved with great communication, which is, again, in relationships as well. Whether they're at work or at home, if you're open and willing to solve things and communicate, everything can be sorted.
When you reach the point, though, where the problem can't be solved, and like you said, 40 years marriage, they hate each other. I had one, it was very funny. A gentleman contacted me. He said he had retired after 35 years. He had never spent more than a few hours a day, except on weekends, with his wife. Now he's got to spend 8 hours a day with her. She's got to spend 8 hours a day with him. And sooner or later, either he's going to kill her or she's going to kill him. He's got to find work. It was hysterical. She was, I could hear her in the background laughing. But you get on, as you said, you get on each other's nerves and you have to come up with a solution.
Yes.
And sometimes you can't. Now, their solution was he was going to leave the house. He was going to get a job. It didn't matter what the job was. He didn't have to be the president of a company. I don't know if you have this in the UK, but there are greeters at Walmart. These are older people who greet shoppers when they come.
Yeah.
It didn't matter what the job was. He just wanted something to do to get out of the house and get away from his wife. And his wife wanted him out of the house and away from her. There comes a point in a relationship where things are going downhill and you really can't bring them back.
Yes.
So what happens?
Well, what happens is someone has to take a decision before it's too late. And especially if the decision is either, I mean, the decision can be one of the two. Either they decide to, yes, put in some effort and get to know each other again and learn how to live with each other, and not necessarily compromise, because in compromise, I feel that everyone is losing something, but mostly to negotiate, you know, how we go forward with this in a way that we're both comfortable with it. Or, listen, I really can't stand your face after so many years. I'm so fed up with you. I just want out. And then that's it. You want out, you get out, and that's it. It's not the end of the world anymore, you know, if you get divorced. And at least that person knows that, hey, we've tried everything. This is not going to work anymore. For example, I have my grandmother's sister. Her husband died a few years ago. And I remember on the funeral day, she was going around and telling everyone that they've been married 43 or 45 years, something like that. And to me at that time, it seemed so much, like literally a lifetime married. And she kept repeating this as a badge of honor, like, oh my God, listen, like 40 something years we've been together. Like, I've resisted being married to this man for 40 something years, you know? And I've asked her at some point, and I said, okay, but out of that 40 something years, how many years were you actually happy? Like happy? And she looked at me shocked. She's like, what do you mean happy in marriage? Like, who does that? Like, who gets married to be happy? And to me, that was shocking and heartbreaking at the same time. And I was like, so 40 something years of mostly misery than happy. Because she said they didn't have like years of happiness. They had like bits and pieces here and there. And she said maybe put together 2 or 3 years out of 40 plus. And that itself just shocked me. And I said, no, I don't want to get married unless, I mean, we cannot be 100% certain ever, but I said, I don't want to get married unless I know I'm getting married to someone who is willing to put in the effort, you know?
The reason I'm laughing is that I was asked to introduce a friend of mine at some event. And for the first time, I met his wife. And I said, how many years have you been married? And she said, 20. I don't remember. So when I was introducing him, I said, I also had the pleasure of meeting his wife, Diane. And she told me that you have given her the 5 happiest years of her life. And he fell right into it. And she said, we've been married 20 years. I said, she said 5 years we're happy. Why did I go him up? She had no sense of humor. How the two of them ever cooked up, I don't understand. In any event, on that note, I want to share your contact information. And I will magically make us reappear. And I have one final question for you. Is there anything I did not ask you that you wish I had asked you? And if I had asked you, what would you have said?
I don't have a specific question in mind per se. It's just one thing I would want to leave your audience with is that I know that to some, especially if they've been struggling in the relationship for many years, they don't really see a way out in any way and they just struggle. You don't have to. Like, yes, having a great relationship takes a bit of effort, but it doesn't have to be soul draining, that effort, that you have to do to improve your relationship. You can do it with, a lot of tools out there, like the Better Topics card game if you want, or there are many other things that you can do in your relationship to move it towards a better place. Because I truly believe that we all deserve to have great relationships as long as we're willing to actually put in some effort into them.
Someone in the US wants to purchase the game, they can do it online?
Yes, they can do it on Amazon for US, UK, and Australia, or on our website, which is bettertopics.com.
Diana, thank you very much. This has been very interesting and I hope helpful to a lot of our viewers.
Thank you, Bruce, again for having me on our podcast. I had a lot of fun.
My pleasure. I'm Bruce Hurwitz. Thank you for watching. And as always, please stay focused on success.